Make sure you turn off the incriminating stuff first. Okay, we got your slides
Exactly.
up.
Okay, great.
There you go.
Perfect. So like everyone else, I'm new to Zoom, learning new things while we're staying inside, which I feel, fortunate to live in the place that we do in this day and age. It's not the worst situation for some of us. So my name is Christine Feleki. I am an apprentice splitboard guide with the ACMG, and I live in Squamish as well. Work kind of throughout Alberta and British Columbia. And in the summer times, I work hiking guide and a little bit of kind of intro to mountaineering type stuff. And I'm going to talk today about roping up for glacier travel. One second here. Sorry, just trying to learn how this works. Okay. So roping up for glacier travel. So this talk, we're going to consider a couple different things. Though the things I'm hoping to talk about, I only have half an hour here, so there's quite a bit I tried to cram in. But roping up, so using a rope or not to use a rope, sometimes we have to make those decisions. Rope type and length, so how much rope, what kind of rope are we going to bring, how to divide the rope to set ourselves up to travel on the glaciers, and then attach to that rope. What do we do with the extra rescue rope that we may have brought? And then just quickly touching on the basic crevasse rescue kit that everyone in your team should be carrying to be out on a glacier. So the first topic here is rope travel. So using a rope or not using a rope. So if there are situations sometimes where we decide that maybe we don't want to put a rope on, and we're going to get into those next, but overall, we should probably put the rope on more often than we do. And I know when I think back to when I first started getting into this kind of stuff, and I probably didn't wear the rope as much as I should have, and got lucky, or hopefully was in the right terrain for that. But reasons to put the rope on, one being, is the terrain conducive to crevasses? So are you in more convex terrain? Maybe you're traveling near the outside of the glacier edge. You're just getting onto the toe, or the glacier's moving around a corner, something like that. Those are all places where crevasses are more likely to form. If you have limited knowledge of the terrain, or it's difficult to assess the terrain, maybe because the visibility is poor, other good reasons to wear the rope. As well, we want to think about what the snowpack is doing. Is it shallow, weak, or variable? So maybe you only have 100 centimeters of snow, and it's faceted, and it goes from 100 centimeters here to 150 over there, and it's hard to kind of keep a handle on it. It's going to be really hard to have faith in crevasse bridging, or just in the general snowpack itself. So wearing a rope in those situations adds that extra security. You also want to have the rope on where it decreases hazard. So the rope in general is keeping us safe from a crevasse fall. We'll get into why you might take the rope off for other hazards, but if you're working through heavily crevasse terrain, you should definitely have a rope on for that. In the summertime, we often travel on glaciers on foot, which makes us more susceptible to breaking through crevasse bridges, or just punching a hole in the snow in general, deeper into the snow. And we may walk on bare ice, but as soon as we get up into the snow-covered part of the glacier, so above the fern line, we'll probably want to put the rope on there as well. It's going to be harder for us to maybe see crevasses that have been slightly covered by snow, or judge the bridging strength. And in general, we want to think about when is the snow the strongest. So our best snowpack is kind of in late winter and early spring, or midsummer, after the snowpack has gone through significant melt freeze cycles. All right, so Going ahead here, we'll talk about when we might not use the rope. So again, in the summertime, when the ice is free of snow, we can see all the crevasses. It's easy for us to walk around. We've got our crampons on. It's going to be much easier for us to just move without the rope on and just avoid the hazards. We may choose to not wear the rope where walking into terrain that is not conducive to forming crevasses. So in concave terrain, supported terrain, low angle terrain, places where we're very familiar with the terrain and we can see the crevasses or bridges, and it's very easy for us to navigate and link safe places in terrain, which also is helpful if we have good visibility to do that sort of thing with. Again, the snow depth, strength, and coverage plays into this. So good snow depth, on average, we say we like to see about 2 meters of snow on a glacier to start having confidence in that snowpack for bridging purposes. However, again, if you have a poor, weak snowpack, even though you have 2 meters, that might not be enough to give you confidence to walk without a rope. And then the last point here about avalanche hazard outweighing crevasse hazard, maybe this could also include ice fall or serac fall, that kind of thing. But if you're walking into somewhere where having a rope on actually puts you more at risk because you're now attached to several other people, and if something happens to them, you're going to get pulled with them, you may need to consider not using the rope for that area. But another thing to think about is that when you are traveling unroped, you need to constantly reevaluate the decision that you've made and possibly be ready to put the rope on if things change. Maybe the weather moves in, maybe the snowpack changes, the hazard changes, any sort of thing like that. Like, just because you've chosen not to wear the rope doesn't mean the rope stays off forever. Cool. So the next slide here, I wanted to talk about choosing the rope to bring on your trip. There's lots of options out there. The other day, Jeff did a little talk on the new lightweight rope kits that are out there, which are great for glacier travel. However, they're very purpose-built and they're not meant for every objective that you have out there. So the other ropes that we commonly use and have used, for a long time are single ropes or what we call half ropes. Both of these are dynamic ropes. They have stretch in them, which is good for vertical climbing, leading, putting, if you're going to lead up something with, sorry, just blanking here, protection, you're placing protection or something like that. You don't want to do that on a static line where you could possibly take a fall and shock load that line. That's not a safe way to travel with a static line, or a hyperstatic line, sorry, I should say. So choosing that rope is super important. Also considering, do I need 1 rope or 2? What's my objective for the day? Maybe I need 3 ropes. We're moving away more and more from one person carrying 60 meters of rope. And I mean, Lori touched on it in hers. We want to have lighter packs, save our backs, help ourselves out for longer periods of time over our course of our career here. But it also is good not to have all your resources in one basket. So by splitting up the ropes, we can have more rescue rope available. So it's more common now for people to maybe choose to bring 2 chunks of 30-meter or 30, 40-meter ropes, something like that. And then if you are going to move together as one big team, the person in the middle would clip into both ropes and continue on like that. One rope I want to mention out though that is not recommended for glacier travel is what we call a twin rope. This is also a dynamic rope. It's meant to be used with another rope. It's twin. And these ropes just tend to have even more stretch than a single or a half rope, which can be a problem when you get into actual rescue. person falling is going to put more stretch on that rope, and they could possibly fall farther into the crevasse, wedge themselves in, that kind of thing. And then when you are hauling people out, you're going to have to haul through even more stretch in the line than you would on a single or a half rope. So that's the reason that we don't recommend using twin ropes. Okay, the next slide here. So dividing the rope. So how do we actually set ourselves up for traveling on the glacier with the rope? We need to divide the rope into equal sections and give ourselves enough space so that we are not all standing on a crevasse or a bridge at the same time. And we also are giving ourselves enough space to kind of work as a moving belay. If someone does fall, we're far enough away to catch that fall. And so this also is something to think about. You know, traveling in a rope team of just 2 people doesn't give you a lot of anchor if I fall in and the person behind me is only, you know, 10 meters away and they get pulled, you know, 5 meters, and now they're like right close to the crevasse lip, and it just becomes a lot more complicated and harder for them to hold that fall versus having several people on that line. If I fall in, there's just a lot more weight and anchor behind me. So we recommend definitely traveling with like 3 to 4 people. And then if you are traveling in bigger teams, maybe you have several rope teams of 3 to 4 people on a rope. Another thing to consider is the size of crevasses you plan to be dealing with. And so as you cross through or weave yourselves through crevasses, have to cross crevasse bridges, or maybe walk in echelon formation along a crevasse, how much rope that's actually going to take to allow your team to do that safely. And so on average, in the area that we live in here, you know, Squamish, like the Coast Mountains, interior, Rockies, we're, you know, probably putting about 10 to 12 meters of distance between each person and the rope team. If you start getting into bigger mountain ranges with bigger glaciers, you're going to up the length of distance that you put between people. And then another consideration while doing this is that each knot you tie is overall is probably taking up 2 to 5 meters of the overall length in your rope. And so this is important because when you are finished configuring your rope, you want to have double the length of rescue rope available on the surface than what would be between yourself and the next teammate. So if I have 10 meters between me and my teammate, I want to have 20 meters of rescue rope available on the surface. If I bring a 30-meter rope for 3 people, I don't really have enough rope there, and it would be useful to have a second 30-meter rope in the team, either carried in a pack, or maybe we've got both ropes kind of strung out and we've worked something together there. I'm hoping to just kind of roll through the slides here, and then if I have time, actually get into showing you some of the skills. So let's just keep moving with the slides at the moment. Okay, so the next slide here is attaching to the rope. So some considerations here are tying in versus clipping into the rope. In general, in glacier travel situations, we tend to clip into the rope. We do this for several reasons, most of them being that we want to be able to quickly escape the situation if we needed to. So this is more so if you actually had to do crevasse rescue, you would be able to get off of the line easier than if you had tied in. If you went over knots with Ross the other day, he probably talked about a couple, and in the lightweight rope kit as well, you know, the tie-in knot that they suggest is a barrel knot there, a figure 8 on a bight, or an overhand on a bight. I think the Petzl manual talks about people who are in the center of the rope or mid rope, clipping in using a clove hitch to do so. which is acceptable. It's just that if you have to escape that rope, it's going to be a lot harder to get out of a clove hitch than it would be to get out of a figure eight or an overhand on a bite. So something to consider. It's also important how you, or what kind of carabiners you clip into with on a glacier. So unlike rock climbing, we are not constantly checking out our rope and our harness, and we kind of walk and just leave everything there for a while, and things move and shift and rub against each other. And so we need to be careful with the carabiners that we use. So the old standard is having kind of 2 locking carabiners, or a locking and a non-locking carabiner here, if everyone can see those, opposite and opposed. So you would clip in on your belay loop with your carabiners, and you want to have the gates opposite to each other, so that when if one does open, it's blocked by the other carabiner. Having a nice small knot to tie into here, which is what the barrel knot is nice for. It actually acts as kind of what we call a captive eye, and keeps the carabiners from being cross-loaded. So if you tie a figure eight on a bite or an overhand on a bite, having that loop at the top being quite snug is also going to help with that. Sorry, just trying to read my slide there. So then you've clipped into the rope, and you definitely need to do a buddy check. So you want to check that your harnesses are all good to go. Everyone's got the right carabiners used. Another carabiner story here that I forgot to mention now that we could use is what we call a triple action carabiner. So it's going to take 3 movements to open this carabiner. So I have to push up, slide, and then open. And that is acceptable to use on its own. And this one has what we call a captive eye as well. So you'll slide the rope in there, and it's going to keep this carabiner from being cross-loaded. So personally, I like to use this one for clipping into the rope.
Can you just cancel your screen share for a second so people can see you?
Yes, I think. 1 second.
At the bottom.
I just have to find the...
At the bottom, the green button.
Yeah, for some reason it's... There we go. Cancel. Stop share. Okay.
There you go. Now everybody can see you.
Oh, sorry. No one could see me before. Right. Okay. Can you see me now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So back to the carabiners. So clipping in, you would want to use either 2 locking or a non-locking and a locking carabiner, opposite and opposed. So the gates are facing away from each other. Or you could use what we call a triple action carabiner. So it's going to take 3 movements to open this carabiner. And this one has what we call a captive eye as well. And that is going to help the rope from cross-loading while you're walking around. And then again, saying if you tie your knots kind of snugly, that will also help if you didn't have a captive eye. So then you go through your harness check, and I'll go back to my screen share here. Play. So checking that the harnesses are high and tight, so the waistband is up over your hips, everything is locked and secured, you're tied in correctly. And then one other consideration is pre-rigging what we call the prusik hitch. And this is kind of scenario dependent on what you're doing. Maybe you want to have that on or not. Understanding what the use of that would be helpful in making those decisions. It's very helpful if you did have to do crevasse rescue to have that already pre-rigged. You're set up to transfer the load onto the anchor right away. You're also set up for belaying yourself in towards the anchor. And so the prusik hitch can also be used outside the crevasse rescue to kind of belay up and down and keep slack out of the system. But it does take some practice and understanding why you'd be doing that. So lots of people walk around without it on there. Lots of people walk it with it on there, but it's just a decision that you need to understand why you're making. Okay, so the next slide here is what do we do with the extra rope that we have for rescue? Possibly you have none. Maybe you've got 2 teams of 4 people, and you're going to have one full team on the surface, and they have a full extra rope with them, and maybe that takes care of it. But likely you're going to have some extra leftover rope. So the most common ways for people to carry rope is probably just to lap or butterfly coil the rope and then stick it on the back of the backpack. And then it'll come down and you do your tie-in and you're off to the races. Another common way that you see is the mountaineer coil. So like in the picture here, you've got the loops around the neck, and those will become tied off. And then you'll tie off and then tie into the rope. And that is useful if you are maybe needing to change the rope lengths, and maybe you take, so this is, we use it often in guiding when maybe I would have rescue rope in my pack, but then I would take coils in between myself and the person I'm next to shorten the rope if we had to move through some terrain that didn't require a long rope setup. But to walk around with 30 meters of mountaineer's coil around your neck for a whole day, just because is not the most comfortable, and probably nicer to have it in a lap or butterfly coil in the backpack. And another option that a lot of people are doing now is the stuff sack. I mean, the rad line comes with a stuff sack, and you just have it kind of stuffed in there and then in the pack. And if you do need the rope, it just pulls out of the pack nice, quick, and easy. And that's a really nice way to carry the rope as well. All right. So then the last slide here that I have is kind of the minimum requirements for crevasse rescue that you would need. So in general, whoops, sorry, I'm not sure what just happened. Play. In general, obviously you need a harness, and if you are choosing not to wear the rope on a glacier, it's still a good idea to have your harness on with your carabiners set up to clip into the rope so that you're ready to go if you need to. You're going to have locking carabiners in there, non-locking carabiners. On average, people bring 4 lockers, 4 non-lockers. This can get, pared down or changed, or maybe you bring more depending on how many people are in your group. 2 people in a team, they're going to need more gear on their own person than 6 people in a team, because if you're just one person rescuing, you're going to need to have everything available to you to rescue. So something to think about. And this also takes a lot of practice. I wouldn't recommend paring down your rope kit if you are not super experienced with how to kind of improvise if something goes wrong. So in general, 4 locking carabiners, 4 non-locking carabiners. Usually you want to have about 2 5-meter prusik cordelettes. And this prusik cordelette diameter will depend on the diameter of rope you choose. So with the newer hyperstatic cords, we're having to go down to 5 mil prusik cord with that. You probably want to find something nice and supple, make sure it grabs well. And then it's also good to have a 1.5 meter prusik cord as your personal prusik. Some people are using what we call hollow blocks or pre-tied different types of cordage there that they're using as a personal prusik for kind of a backup belay on a rappel or all sorts of other things there. It's a good idea to have one nice big long sling in your kit, maybe even two, an ice screw, an ice axe, and then crampons, which would be dependent on your objective and time of year and stuff like that, but something to definitely consider. And then the optional stuff here is when you start getting into more gadgety type stuff. So to make your crevasse rescue easier, you could add a pulley to your system. You could add a micro traction or other ratchet variations. Maybe you bring a T-block, you bring another sling. You choose to bring like an ATC or guide ATC device and that sort of thing. So that is my slideshow. How did that go there for everyone? Looks like
Awesome.
a couple questions here. What time are we at? 4:30, is that pretty much my time?
No, you can answer some questions.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that I'm gonna have time to really get too much into showing you how to divide the rope and that kind of stuff, but Altus has great crevasse rescue courses out there next winter. So let's take a look at some questions here. So the screen is still on the PowerPoint. Oh, got that. Okay. What is an ice screw? Can it be used as an anchor? Okay, Heather. So ice screws can be used as anchors, not usually on their own, but if you, an ice screw is basically what it sounds like. It's a screw that you drill into the ice and then it has something you can clip onto. You may need to have a specialty tool as well, depending where you're going, called an abellaclave, which would help you make what we call a T-thread anchor, or an abellaclave anchor, sorry. And these two things compared, you could make one part of an anchor, or you could make, and then get into threading the anchor and putting the ice screw in. Sorry, I'm getting lost in my own words here. But another nice thing that the ice screw is good for is if you are skiing maybe unroped in the crevasse, or you fall into a crevasse and there's not many teammates above you, is I would screw this into that crevasse wall really quick, clip myself to a sling on it, and just know that at least I've got one thing that's going to keep me from falling in any further while the people up on the surface get themselves sorted. So hopefully that answers the ice screw question. In the chat here, what are the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you decide when when you're on a glacier and you're roped together crossing crevasses? How do you decide when to switch to using an anchor and a belay?
Sorry, say that again.
If you're on a glacier and you're
Yeah.
roped together walking across crevasses and potential crevasses, how
Yeah.
do you decide when to switch to an anchor and a belay?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So if I'm on maybe I have to cross a bridge that is suspect and for some reason can't find a better way, that would probably require, just some sort of anchor. Maybe it's myself and just like a quick T-slot, where I'm going to then use hip belay, or maybe belaying off my harness, would be one example. Or if I start getting into more steeper snow climbing, where I'm not actually worried about the avalanche hazard, but maybe a slip or something like that, people could slide, or there's some crevasses below if we did fall into, you'd probably want to be, if the steps aren't good, you're kind of more on hard snow or somewhat icier conditions, switching over to an actual anchor belay versus just a walking belay would be important in that situation.
Any other questions?
It looked like there was some in the comments here. Let me just see. What are your thoughts on the magnetic carabiners for glacier travel? Are they acceptable substitute? So you're talking about like the positron ones, I think, where you click the sides. Those work okay. They just tend to freeze a little bit. They work well in the summer. They work less well in the winter, I think. And if you're using a split rope, 230 meters with 3 people, have person in the middle tie into both. Okay, good question. So again, we're trying not to tie into ropes. So what you would do in that situation is you would have them clip in. So at the end of each rope, you would tie your figure eight on a bight, your overhand on a bight, your barrel knot, and they would clip into 2 different carabiners to that middle line. So they would have two different lines coming off of them on 2 different carabiners. Can you comment on skiing down unroped versus roped? Yeah, so skiing down roped up sucks. It's hard to do. It's hard to keep the tension in the rope. In general, the reason that you're skiing roped is because you want to have that distance between each other, and when you're moving downhill, it's harder to keep that rope tension and keep it from piling up in your skis and stuff like that. So you have to really be good at communicating with your rope team. You're going to go slowly, especially, you know, somewhere on the Columbia, you're probably got a big pack on doing that too. But it does happen if you're skiing in a whiteout, if you're skiing, I mean, it's happened to me where I'm on the Columbia ice field and we walked up and it was all good. And then we camped and we came through and it had snowed overnight and we couldn't trust we just couldn't trust that we knew exactly where those crevasses were anymore. And we had to basically ski down roped up. So oftentimes people want to ski without a rope on, but it does happen where you have to have a rope on to ski down. Yeah, there are a couple decent videos out there on the website. If you just search kind of roping up for glacier travel that go over dividing the rope and stuff like that, if you guys are looking to get into that right away here. But it's a little hard to do over the internet at the moment. Is there any more questions out there?
We've got one question about catching a fall on skis, not
Okay.
necessarily with crampons on, and how that's different.
How to catch on a fall on skis. Right. Yeah. So something to think about in a snow environment is that the snow itself offers a dynamic belay. So one of the reasons that we're getting away with using these hyperstatic lines in winter glacier travel is the fact that the snow is absorbing some of that energy. So catching a fall on skis in deeper snow, just by falling into that snow itself is going to already give you an advantage, because you're going to dig into the snow, the rope's going to cut into the snow. But yeah, it can be a little hard. You're going to do the best you can. You're going to try to dig in. You probably don't have an ice axe in your hand like you often do in the summertime. You've got ski poles, so you're going to get your edges in, try to turn onto your belly if you can, and possibly once the fall is caught, maybe you consider digging yourself in a little more. But the skis themselves are also helping you stay above the surface, and you're now in a situation where you're not entirely sure that you're in a safe spot. So before you hop out of your skis and kind of punch deeper into the snow, you will want to be able to confirm that it's okay for you to do so by probing at some point once you've got an anchor built. Are there any tutorials that are ski specific? Petzl, has quite a few great tutorials on just kind of ski mountaineering in general, as well as G3 has a whole kind of tutorial series that they go through that you can get some good information from. I didn't prepare a resources page, unfortunately, but I would definitely check out those 2 places, and then I would take a course in this stuff. It's one thing to learn something online, but we are continually changing the tools that we use, thinking of better ways to do things. And so it is really good if you're new to this to go and take a course and kind of get it dialed and then go and practice this, because once you've learned how to do a Z pulley once, you definitely haven't learned how to do it efficiently, because you'll probably forget in a month what you're trying to do. So cool. It looks like that's everything. Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and it's great to be allowed to get on this platform and share and connect with everyone in these times. And yeah, big thank you for Ross for organizing this, and really cool that we're able to kind of help out with our donations going to a good cause here as well. And again, for you guys, it looks like there is a giveaway with the backpack. If you comment, I think one of the instructor names, links on the Altus website, on Instagram, and on my Instagram as well. So it's just my name, so you can check that out. And hopefully someone wins a nice backpack.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Christine.